Matthew, everyday audiophile, music lover. Today, no beer. I know the last video I said that I was going to continue, but usually during January it's my dry month. December, there's, for better or worse, a lot of beer to be had. My wife gets me an advent calendar that's a beer I haven't had every single day through the whole of December, right, until Christmas. So to make up for that, drink a little bit less in January. Not going to say it's completely empty, but not for this video. But today, we're finally going to talk about this amplifier right behind me. It is truly a special piece and something that I think is going to live in my system for the foreseeable future. That's really how good it is. So let's dive right in. This lovely piece, depending on how you like this power chord in the front, is the Finale Grand Finale V12. And it's called the V12 because there are 12 6v6 tubes, 6 per channel. That makes it in my estimation, this is a parallel push-pull amplifier. It pushes 40 watts per channel. And it is dual mono for all intents and purposes. You have one giant power transformer. Behind that is a choke. And then output transformers in the back. The reasoning, I'll say this up front, it's not my greatest thing that I love. I actually intend on making a new chassis for this to move the power to the back. But the reason it is this way is for the shortest path, right? Since the power transformer is here in the front, it makes it easiest to put the power there. The inputs and the speaker terminals are right back there on the other side. So, what is this? And where did it come from? And what does it sound like? Why is it now, maybe not my reference, my EL84 monoblocks are still something truly special. And I'll get around to talking to those at some point in the near future. But why has this been in the system, and what makes it a worthy contender? Well, based on my conversations with Frank, this came about. Usually his big amplifiers seem to be works that are commissioned. Sometimes, usually there are things that he wants to make. He wants to make a big 211, so he's going to go build a 211 amp and start marketing it. But sometimes he gets a request for specialty pieces, as I'm going to call it. And I'd like to believe that the monoblock version of this, which is just the grand finale, is the commission. I don't know if it was the 6v6. There's 2 other tube types that he offers with the grand finale. I don't know which one was originally asked for, but I know that there is a 6v6 grand finale monoblocks in circulation somewhere, and I would desperately love to get my hands on them sometime. And they are, instead of 6 tubes per channel, they're 8 tubes per channel, I do believe. And they're also around 40 to 50 watts per monoblock, but then you get 2 power transformers, 2 chokes, so it's truly mono instead of this more dual mono because of a single power plug. From that, I imagine he thought, well, why don't I go and make a stereo version of this? And that's what this is. This is actually the engineering sample after talking with Frank. It was never meant to be sold, but somehow I got my hands on it. He was surprised that it was even shipped down to me here. The thing that makes this special is, yes, it's using a wood chassis here, but on the underside of it, there's no plate. As you can see, I'm using isoacoustic feet. They make a huge difference. But yeah, if you turn it over, and I'll have pictures here, there's no bottom plate. It's all point-to-point wiring. It is a gorgeous job. It is some of the best point-to-point wiring I've ever seen of any amplifier that I've used. Great parts used throughout. I mean, Frank really put his best work into this to make sure that it was as good as it could be from beginning to end. I mean, even the RCA ports and the speaker terminals are Cardis pure copper. Mundorf silver and oil, Supreme caps inside. It is wonderful. And all of those quality parts, the big transformers, all of these tubes, they do come at a cost, and that cost is weight. Now, weight is a good thing. This weighs 60 pounds, and I desperately, not desperately, I hate moving it. It will live here as long as it can. I do have a new media console coming in, so it will get moved somewhere in the rack. It's going to be one that's a little bit more conducive to having gear and swapping it out as needed. So it will get moved whenever that comes in, but after that, it will stay in place, and it will, as far as I can see, it'll be one of my reference amps, one of my 2 or 3 reference amps. So I'm gonna have the EL84s; those are in the back right now. I'm gonna have this 6V6, and then I'm gonna have my Rigo Cyrus, hopefully to be replaced soon with the Riga Solus and Mercury once those are officially announced. As far as tube complement is concerned, this was a little bit of a new one for me, right? So it's 12 6v6s, 6 per channel. These ones are just new electro-harmonic 6v6s. There's nothing too special about them. It's pretty much impossible to find a dozen matched these days, so you have to go with new. The input tubes, there's a 6922 input tube. Right now, it has a 6N23P, which is the Russian equivalent. It's pretty much the best that you can get, so it's not going to be changed. And then the driver tubes, those are 2 that I'd never really seen before. I had to go out and buy a few. 6CG7, I think that's what the tube is. It's basically, from my understanding, it's a superpower 12BH7. That's a bit of a generalization because it's not a perfect match to a 12BH7, which is a bigger 12AU7. But I think that's the easiest way to think about that tube. You can't hot swap them. That's not something that you can put a 12BH7 in this slot. You have to go and buy the proper 6CG7. But that's essentially what the 2 driver tubes are. And I imagine it's needed because it is driving 6 tubes. What are you going to do? All right. Sound quality. This is one that took me by surprise because I really wasn't sure what to expect out of this. If, when you're dealing with push-pull amps, when it's just 2 tubes that are push-pull, it's not much of an issue. But when you are starting to run in parallel, so this is 3 sets of parallel push-pull, right? 2, 2, and 2. You now need to worry about how all of those pairs of tubes are balanced between each other in addition to the regular push-pull. And obviously I was completely surprised. I was blown away. The first thing that I noticed was just a creamy, smooth mid-range that's also holographic. It had so much depth to that soundstage. It had so much width. It was so precise. With a lot of tube amps, there is noise that is inherent in the tubes, and I was worried about that with the amount of tubes in here, but it's dead quiet. And when an image is in the center, it is pinpoint in the center. If it moves 4 inches to the left or 4 inches to the right, this presents it in a way that is super realistic and in a way that you can just close your eyes and get lost in the music. And that was something that truly I wasn't expecting. That's really all there is to it. Now, there was an issue, I will say this, with the bass. And it really had to do with the microphonics of the 6v6. As I understand, since it's an older tube design, they can be a little bit microphonic. And so they will pick up vibrations. And this wood chassis with just wood footers on top of a wood media console was just vibration galore. So I did have to go and get these isoacoustic, and that did such... It transformed this amp into something that really surprised me, into something that was world class. Now it had grip on the bass. Now it had bass definition. There was a proper attack and roll off on the bass. The highs, while already a wonderfully smooth, in a good way, and airy, now there was more definition, and I could hear that decay better in some of my tracks that I love, like the Gilad Hexelman Life at Village Vanguard. The Equinox track, which is track 3, is one of my reference tracks for how does the room sound that this person is playing in. Can I really get a sense of how big that space is? And the difference with and without these feet, I'm not going to say the amp was unlistenable before, because obviously I enjoyed it, but it changed the space from something that felt the same size as this room, so 10 feet wide, 20 feet deep, into a mansion. That's really the easiest way to describe it. It made me a believer, for sure. I have more isoacoustic. I have their feet on my speakers. But getting this, which was a bit of an investment, was absolutely worth it. So we've gone over the lows. The lows are just, it has grip over these speakers. It has grip over every other speaker that I've tried. 40 watts, the 25 watts of my EL84s, 26 watts. I already thought that was enough to handle most speakers. It is true that they run out of juice out of these lower sensitivity speakers. Now these are 85 dB, so in a big room, they have trouble going super loud. And this was something that I did run into at Lone Star Audio Fest, where the room is bigger than this, so the speakers are placed more like 10 to 12 feet away from the listening position. And so when you really cranked it, it still sounded good. You have that soft clipping that you get from EL84s, and the EL84s, they do overdrive. I think it's a nice sound, but obviously, with the guitars and stuff. But but you could tell that they just didn't quite have it in them at that point. That doesn't exist with this. I know it's only 15 more watts, but goddamn do these drive these speakers and any others that I've heard so well. So, yeah, in my mind, if you like the way that the 6v6 sounds, this amp is something to consider. Now, I was very lucky in that I was able to pick this up at a greatly reduced price, since it is the engineering sample. The retail version of it is obviously not going to be as cheap, but if you like that 6v6 sound and you want something that has more juice, since traditionally 6v6 amps are limited to only single digits or low double digit wattage, this is something to consider. You will not regret it. I promise you that you will love the way that it sounds. But till then, I'll see y'all next week. I do plan on talking about Mini DSP's Adept, their analog to digital converter. I have been using it. I've been testing it on a few of my records so that I can start digitizing my lacquers, since that isn't something that I am going to be playing every single day. So I'm excited to talk about the lacquers that I've gotten from SuperSense, and I'm excited to talk about the Mini DSP and how they've worked well with each other. And hopefully, I will, with approval, I will be able to share some short clips. But until then, see y'all later.